This conference will now be recorded.
All right, well, thank you so much for everybody who has come here to attend both in person and online. And then if you are a person who's watching this after it's been recorded, thank you again for finding us and finding the video. I highly recommend you go and also watch the other presentations in this series, because Tracy, Mac, and Glenn are amazing individuals, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what they are going to present. So this is the first series of the Alaska Ashrae chapter's Young Engineer Bootcamp. This series is aimed at providing additional information, lessons learned, best practices to people early on in their careers in this industry, but it's also going to be, I believe, helpful for people who've been in the industry for a long time as well, because like I said, I'm looking forward to seeing what Tracy, Mac, and Glenn have to say, because I'm still learning on how to be a better engineer and a better person in general. And so these soft skills are going to be very helpful to that. So my name is Craig Ferdine, Principal Engineer with Cold Climate Engineering. And if I get the clicker to work, which was working a second ago, it's not working a second ago. All right. The first session is always the hardest. Yeah. Technical issues. Come on now. Here we go. Woohoo! All right, we're on a roll. Slide number 2. All right, so as I mentioned, this presentation is targeted for young people in the vertical and construction industry and sub-consulting, but it is, again, hopefully very good information for all of us in the industry. What these seminars are not technical presentations. That is one thing the engineering societies do an outstanding job on, is providing tons of technical information. You know, Ashrae alone puts out a handbook every year that is an inch thick, chock full of technical information. In fact, all of you probably have at least one email in your inbox today of a webinar on technical information. So we're not going to cover that. This is also not specifically a leadership or a project management seminar series. Again, there's lots of information out there in the industry on that. Not to say that the information that we're going to talk about here today definitely is going to apply and make you a better leader, make you a better project manager. We're just not specifically focusing on that. These are the day-to-day things that you are going to use to be able to survive this industry and thrive and be successful. So an introduction to me again, my name is Craig Ferdine. I am a huge and proud geek. Early on in my life, I got the nickname lovingly given to me by Egghead, and so I had to embrace my inner nerd and just live with it and roll with it. Been in the industry for 25 years, designing systems in Alaska, throughout Alaska, all sorts of different types of buildings, and also a few projects in Antarctica as well. I said I've been around the block, yeah. But in addition, to add to my nerd card there, you know how people have like taxidermied fish or, you know, hunting trophies up on their walls? Well, hanging proudly above my computer is a 4-foot slide rule. Yes, I am that big of a geek, and I love it. It makes me a fantastic engineer because of that embracement. Love old drafting tools, old calculators, the old, you know, what engineering has stood for years and years, but I'm also super excited about where our industry is and where it's going. It's moving very fast. And for particularly the young professionals, you are going to see some amazing changes in the industry. And I'm looking forward to seeing what you're going to do. So your role as an engineer, that's it. Make the client look good. That if you do that one thing, you'll be successful. And in fact, that's the end of my presentation. We're just going to take questions for the next hour and a half. But no, actually, as with everything in engineering, it's a lot more complicated than that. But again, if you do that, if that is your mantra, you go into work every day and you make your decisions on what is going to make my client look good, you will be on a lot of teams and be highly loved by your clients. The flip side of that being is if you don't do that, you're not going to be on anyone's team and life will be a little bit more difficult. But who is your client? Well, your client is the prime consultant. Typically, mechanical engineers, we are sub-consultants. And your client might be, if you're in the vertical construction world, most likely your prime consultant is an architect, like the gentleman in the turtleneck there, because honestly, who else in the industry wears turtlenecks? But hey, engineers, we get stereotyped all the time, so embrace it, give and take. It's there. They're okay with that. But as you're in the vertical world, your client is going to be an architect. In the horizontal world, where you're working on water treatment plants, airports, roads, stuff like that, your client, the prime consultant, is most likely a civil engineer. In either case, when I say client in this presentation, it means either or. You got to keep them both happy. So how do you do that? First and foremost, meet all your deadlines. These are sacred in the industry. The reason is this: if you miss your deadline and you don't turn your materials in time, that makes your client miss their deadline. And they promised the owner that they were going to submit all the drawings and specs on a certain date, and you just made them a liar. Not only that, you made the entire design team look bad. So that is why deadlines are so important. The second and third items are hugely important, and I'm going to touch a lot on those, is communication and coordination. Again, those are critical to a successful project, and you do that well, you will also do well in this industry. Don't do anything stupid. Or more importantly, don't do anything stupid that's going to make your client look bad. Don't make any mistakes. There's no pressure on that at all. But then the last item, got to be the hardest thing for an engineer, is don't say anything stupid, at least in front of the owner. Now, and I don't mean to say don't say anything ignorant. What I'm more worried about with engineers is people being brutally honest, as engineers like to do, at the detriment of others, i.e. the architect or the prime consultant. So yeah, don't say anything in front of the client that's going to make them look bad, no matter how truthful it may be. Just be quiet and sit there. Okay. Now, for mechanical engineers, you actually have a client number 2, who is just as important as client number 1, which is the facility team. Client number 1 is going to pay your company money, who pays you your paycheck. That's important. Client number 2 is the one who has to live with your design for years and years and years. So you need to make sure they are involved throughout the process, and they're on board with all of your selections. That means communicating with them before the design, throughout the design. Make sure they're QCing and reviewing your design while you're designing it, or at the major milestones, throughout construction, warranty, and even after the project is done. You really need to want to be in contact with the facility manager and the team. And here's a really good example why. Because if you put a 150-pound pump 8 feet in the air, may God have mercy on your soul when it's time to change out that motor or the pump seal. Because by the time they fix that pump, you will have been damned to hell in 5 different religions. So it's important to keep these guys going and being happy with your designs. With great knowledge comes great responsibility. Engineers, you are always going to have to explain engineering to people who know nothing about it, but then also you're going to have to be explaining why you're doing your systems to people who do know a lot about engineering and the mechanical industry. Never be condescending, particularly contractors. They will bury you out back 6 feet under, and they will otherwise make you look like an idiot throughout construction. It's hard as an engineer not to mansplain things. I get it. I totally get it. Because you don't know what the level of knowledge is of the recipients who are hearing this. The tool I use is as you know. In fact, I used that very phrase 2 times in my truck driving over here on the phone call. As you know is a fantastic way of covering up mansplaining, because what it does is it acknowledges, if the person does know what you're talking about, it acknowledges their knowledge and their information, and they appreciate that you're not, thinking they don't know what this is. The other side of as you know is if they did not know, you just gave them an out without them having to feel stupid that they did not, in fact, know what you're talking about. They can just nod their head and go with it. So, for instance, on that would be, okay, so cast iron boilers, as you know, they end up cracking their sections when they're on high fire and we get a cold slug of water. So how we're designing the system to protect against that is X, Y, and Z. So I love to use the as you know statement. It really helps out. Mechanical systems. should be senseless, not to be heard, not to be felt, not to be seen. And what is an easy way to explain this is to ask you, think about how you're feeling right now. Now in the permit room, we got the back door jacked open, so you're cold. So this really doesn't work very well for the people who are here. But normally, the room is 70 degrees, indoor air quality is fantastic, and it's quiet. Nobody ever walks into a room and says, wow, that mechanical engineer kicked butt on this design. No, they only think about your design when they can hear it, when they're hot or they're cold, or in the case of the architects, if they can see it. So the brutal truth about our industry is if you do your job really well, everyone's going to forget about you. So good job, you got forgotten. That's one of the things when I was talking about staying in touch with that facility manager. That's another good reason to come back about a year or two later and ask them how the mechanical system is. They might sit there and pause and go, yeah, no, it's been doing great. The electrical system sucks, but the mechanical has been doing great, because they forgot about it. They didn't have to think about your system because you did a good job and you made their life easy. But reminding them that, yeah, you did a good job and you made their life easy is beneficial for you. Communication. One of the pillars of a successful project is communication. I put this up here. This is the classic Dr. Mehrabian's 738 55% rule. And yes, there's a lot of controversy on this study. It was done in the 60s, and it's been used throughout the business world about communication, especially in the age of email and texting. This study originally was designed to be able to see how humans can read people's emotions, not communicate how a duck goes through a shear wall. But the same situation occurs here. We do a lot of communication as human beings face to face. The 38% would be over the phone. The 7% is email and text. So keep this in mind, especially as we start moving more towards an email-based society. Pro tip, learn body language. This is something that not a lot of people in the profession do or know. I use it a lot. It was eye-opening to me when I got upon it. The first thing I say is crossing of arms and or legs. And I love doing this part of this presentation very late, after about half the room is crossing their arms, because when you cross your arms in a meeting or anywhere else, what you are doing is you are putting up a defense. You are basically telling the other person that you are not buying what they're saying, that you are skeptical of what they are saying, and you are putting up a personal defense against what this other person is doing or saying. The same thing goes for crossing your legs. So typically what ends up happening is people start uncrossing their arms and they cross their legs under the table. That is still the same thing. The other things that are well known in the Western world regarding positive body language is how you shake hands, how your eye contact is. I have literally given a whole 1-hour presentation on body language alone. It is a fascinating field, one I highly recommend you look at. And within a couple hours surfing the internet, you'll be able to figure it out pretty well. Learning body language, like I said, it's a subliminal thing. It'll help you read other people and what they're doing and what they're feeling. And also if they're actually listening to what you're presenting. Once you know this, you also can project subliminal information. If you ever see me, Craig Ferdine, cross my arms, I guarantee you I'm doing it on a purpose. I'm doing it purposefully to tell the other person that I'm not buying what they're selling. There's a whole bunch of other tricks that you can learn when you do it, when you look into this, that you can project subliminal information to other people. And then also, once you're in the know, you can recognize when somebody else is trying to manipulate you using body language. So it's also a defense against manipulation. And again, if you don't believe body language is a huge thing, all I got to do is remind you that when you were a kid and you were goofing off and you saw how your mom was looking at you, yeah, the mom look. We all know it. Not a word is spoken, but yet you know you better stop what you're doing right now or there will be consequences. So obviously, body language is huge. Body language is also bidirectional. So the old saying of if you're upset or you're sad, smile and you'll be happy, it's kind of hokey, but the reality is with body language, that is the case as well. If you are listening to somebody like your significant other and you want to Absorb what they are saying and listen to them intently. Uncross your arms, uncross your legs, and lean forward, and that will change your physiology to where you will actually listen and learn better. So it is reversible. One quick story that I want to tell in the industry regarding the use of body language is when you start going into design meetings, face-to-face coordination meetings, all the disciplines are there. Of course, this will be after COVID kind of burns down a little bit, but principal architect would be in that meeting, and you want to impress them because they're your client, right? So I had one series in a project where we were sitting around the table, and with all these coordination meetings, all the disciplines take turns talking about their systems. So it was my turn to talk. The structural engineer, who I know, who's a well-known structural engineer in the city, would lean back, cross his arms, and frown. And so here I am trying to impress the principal architect at the end of the table about how good of an engineer and how good of a job I'm doing on their project. And all these negative vibes are being given off from across the table. It's highly annoying. I'm not saying do that to your competition. I'm not saying that whatsoever, but I'm saying how this is a negative thing. Now, on the flip side, different project, different set of meetings, civil engineer in town, who I've actually was, I know from high school and was a friend with him in high school. Same thing, mechanical engineer. I start going, talking about my systems. But out of the corner of my eye, he starts nodding his head. He's leaning forward. He's looking at me intently, listening to what I'm saying. And then I see an occasional head bob, as in like, yep, I got it. Yep, I understand what you're doing. Good job. Total positive vibes. From that day forward, I started adopting this. So if you're working for a mechanical and electrical engineering firm, typically your coworker is also in that meeting. And when that electrical engineer starts talking and, nobody knows what the heck they were talking about anyways, look at it and nod your head up and down. Not like don't be a freaking bobblehead. Make it subtle, but you're giving off those positive vibes that your coworker knows what they're talking about and their approach is really good. Other people in the room, maybe your client who's kind of like skeptical of what the engineer is saying or, doesn't know what they're talking about, your head nod will kind of help tamp down their disapproval of your coworker there. So I like the head nod technique. And then the other thing also is there will be times in your career where things will get tense, probably in a work trailer at a job site when money's at hand. If you know body language, you can use that to de-escalate a situation. Yeah. First takeaway there is body language. All right. Communication, it keeps going. In person. I love to meet with architects in person. It is so much better, particularly on kickoffs and charrettes, but also when you're doing coordination. You're trying to figure out how to route your ductwork through a space or what's going on here or what the architect is planning on for this particular space. I love meeting them face-to-face over a set of drawings and working out projects like that. And let's face it, architects are typically more extroverted than we are. They also really enjoy the face-to-face in-person communication. Pro tip, bring snacks for the office. If it's a morning meeting, bring donuts. If it's the after meeting, bring some cookies. They'll say, hey, who brought the cookies in? I was like, oh, it's Craig from Cold Climate Engineering. Like, oh yeah, he's a great guy. Haha. Get you some good points there with the client. Phone calls. All right, so in-person is better. Skype meetings, go-to meetings like this are the second best thing because you can actually pull up drawings and point and talk about stuff and you can see face-to-face. Too often, we don't use our phone as a phone, and I cannot emphasize this enough. Whenever you have an email and you're going back 2 or 3 times back and forth, just pick up the phone and call them. You're going to get so much more information done so much faster by talking on a phone than you will by email. Difficult issues like construction issues that pop up that require a lot of give and take information of what's going on, a phone call quickly gets to the end on that and reduces a lot of paperwork. However, whatever you're doing on a phone call, if it's going to change your contract or it's going to change the contract documents for a project, you need to follow it up with an email. Absolutely, positively, you need to document it and also inform other people like your mentor, your project manager, and others so that they're in the loop of what you talked about. If you're going to call somebody on their cell phone, be respective of that phone. Whenever I call somebody on their cell, the first thing I start off with is this an okay time to call, or do you want me to call you later? Always be respectful of mobile phones. You don't know where they are, what they're doing. So respect the fact that they even gave you that number. Email. So again, email has its purpose. In fact, it's used, probably many of you get 70 plus emails a day. Email is great for coordination items, to document what you were told and when and by whom. So anything that is related to your design that is a number or a figure, it's good to have that in email to follow up on later on. Design directions, if you're being told to go in a direction by an architect or a client, again, this is good documentation. If it's just a quick email and your client's a chatty Cathy who talks for 15 minutes at a time, email, quick, done, get your answer, move on. Texting, only if you're late to a meeting, and only if you're doing it in a safe location, not while you're driving down the road, okay? Otherwise, don't do it. I personally, maybe I'm too old school, but I think texting your client, unless you're friends, is a bad idea. Unless they initiate, then, roll with it. But I do not, I'm an in-person and over the phone sort of guy. Coordination. The other cornerstone of a successful project is coordination. Design and construction are team sports. Everybody has to do their part. Everybody has to look out for each other, and you don't want any other person on your team looking bad. If you are a proactive coordinator, you're proactively going out there and talking to the architect, the electrical engineer, the structural engineer, and making sure that they've got everything they need to do their designs, you are going to be a hero in this industry. The architect is not the only person who puts a team together. So let's say you have a structural engineer, and that structural engineer has a friend who's a dentist, and that dentist wants to build a new building. So they're going to talk to the only person they know in the built industry, which is your friend, the structural engineer, and ask who should be on their team. If you just gave them all of your loads like the day before a submittal was due and told them that you have all these issues with their brace frames, guess what? Your name's not going to be brought up on that list. But if you're proactively coordinating with that structural engineer and making their life easy, they're going to say, yeah, this person right here, they're a really good engineer, and I think you should grab them. Okay, so this seminar is going to have some handouts. They're not available to the people in person. Sorry, we're lucky to have food in time, or not in time. But and then also for the folks who are going to be watching this, the handouts are going to be posted on the Ashrae website, which will be at the end of the seminar. And this is one of those handouts. This is a design flow diagram. I want to personally thank Danny Rockenstein and the team over at Respect for letting me present this to you today, and then also make this one of the handouts. This is a design flow diagram that Danny and I and the other members at Respect, who was PDC, if you're new to the Respect logo there, that we put together to help the department out on how to do coordination on their projects. The boxes in the middle, so each of these columns is 35, 65, 95, 100. I know there is no way you can possibly read this, so I apologize. That's why the handout's going to be important. But the boxes in the middle are the deliverable, the level of deliverable that we were expecting from our teams going out. What sort of design, what level of design is it, the 65, 95, 100, et cetera. The information on the bottom, and those small boxes on the bottom and the top all say architect, civil, structural, and electrical engineer. So the information on the bottom is the information you need to be able to do your design. So for instance, 35%, electrical engineer, what is the voltage and the phase of power that's going to be at this site? If it's a single phase project, that's going to change your equipment. It might even change how your systems are going to be if you only have single phase power. So that's an example of one of those small little tiny lines in the bottom there of information you need. The information on the top is the hero stuff that's going to make you a fantastic engineer loved by the industry. This is the information you need to be giving to the other disciplines so they can do their job. So for instance, with electrical, 65% you're giving them all your motor loads, where everything is, all your comm drops, where you need receptacles, stuff like that. 95 you're updating it, 100 you're updating it again. if you go through your project, you print this thing out, you set it next to your desk, and you methodically check off each one of these things or highlight them as you go through them, you are going to be a rock star in this industry and you'll be loved by everybody. So this is exceptionally important. I also recommend if your boss gets tired of seeing a respect logo on your desk all the time, ask to generate one of these things in-house with your team as well. All right, managing workload. Okay, so our industry, overtime is going to happen. There's really hard to get out of it. It is going to happen. But I'm just putting this in here to warn you to be careful about it. In my early years, when I was a young professional, I was working 60-hour weeks, pretty much minimums, 80s at least once a month. It was brutal. And once you get to that stage in your career, it is exceptionally difficult to turn that faucet off. It almost gets expected of you. So you need to be careful of that and try and mitigate it when possible. The graphs on the right, there's two of them from two different studies on overtime. The top one shows that if you're working 60-hour weeks consecutively, after about 4 weeks, you're really not getting the productivity out of it. The bottom one is from a project management seminar I took a long time ago that basically shows if you're spending more than 50 hours a week, basically you're not getting much more productivity than 50 hours. So those 50, 60, 80-hour weeks, for that study, you weren't getting much more than 50 out of it. And after that, the burnout, you're down at 30 hours a week productivity. So yeah, it's great and it's needed in this industry, but just be mindful of it. So when I was, again, a young engineer working these 60, 80-hour weeks, I came home one night and my oldest son, who was 4 at that time, came up to me and said, "Thanks for stopping by, Dad." Yeah. So you might not have the ice bucket challenge of reality in your face, but I sure got that, and I quit that job 2 weeks later. As soon as I found another company in the industry that said, "Yeah, we work 40s," I was gone. So be mindful of that. Now, in this industry, you're also going to have stress. Overtime, the crappy food you're going to put in your body at 10 p.m. and at 1 a.m. to try and stay awake and keep working. The lack of sleep, the stress, it is going to impact your physical abilities and your mental abilities. I'm in my late 40s now, and I'm wishing I didn't put all that overtime in. So keep that in mind. How you can mitigate overtime is schedule out your deadlines. What I like to do is I have that laminated 12-month calendar that you get at Office Depot, January through December, and I have that on my wall. And I use a whiteboard markers, and I write down all my deadlines. When I'm traveling, when I'm on supposed vacation, anything that's going to affect my ability to get my deadlines done, I write up on that board. And you will quickly see that you're going to have milestones and deadlines that are going to overlap. That's where your overtime is going to end up. So if you can work ahead, knowing that ahead of time, that will tamp it down. Also, the other important part of that is others in your office will see that too. So when you go to your boss and they say, "Hey, I've got another project for you," it's okay to say, "I'm too busy." It's hard to say, "I can't do that," but do it. Also, it's okay to ask for help. You're not Superman or Superwoman. You're going to need help. When you go and talk to your boss about that and they're like, "Yeah, whatever," they can see your calendar and go, "Oh yeah, okay, I see your calendar. Yeah, we'll get you some help." Your bosses don't want you to burn out. They do not want you to burn out or worse, leave their company. So yeah, just a quick item on overtime. Let's see here. So starting a project off right. Oh, by the way, also going back on that regarding asking for help, learn to do it early, okay? Not at the last day, not the day before the submittal. Try and get it a week early so that your boss and your coworkers can adjust and help you out. Yeah, so I know, I understand it's hard. Everybody thinks they're Superman, Superwoman, and they can make it happen. I just need to put in 80-hour weeks and I'll meet this deadline. But you know, try and project when you're going to need help ahead of time. Starting off a project. Now, I apologize. This presentation is exceptionally disjointed. And the problem is trying to jam 25 years into an hour and a half presentation. You can't do it. I started writing an outline now, and it was like, 4 hours or 6 hours. Like, no, nobody wants to hear an engineer drone on for 4 hours, let alone an hour and a half. But so this is very disjointed because we cannot go through everything that you need to know, just hitting the highlights. And I probably put way too much time in this presentation regarding starting a project right, but the beginning of a project is so important that you know the direction that you need to go, and it'll save you hours and weeks worth of time of a redesign if you screw up the beginning. So the first thing, when your boss walks in and says, hey, we just won this project and you are going to be the engineer on it, these are 3 things you need to ask your boss to provide you. The owner's request for RFP, or for proposal, the RFP. This is what owners put out on the street when they're looking for a building, when they're looking for a design team. The important thing about reading the RFP is if you don't know who this owner is, almost all RFPs have an explanation of who that client is and what they do. So that's important, so you don't look or do or say something stupid in front of the owner. Like, who are you guys? Bad thing to ask. Or have them mixed up with a different client or a different owner out there. But anyways, RFP is a good thing to read. This is also will tell you what the owner's intent for the project was. What did they expect to get out of this building? The next thing you want to get is the design team's RFP response proposal. Typically, this will be submitted by your prime consultant, the architect, or the civil engineer. This is what your client told the owner they're going to get, all right? So you need to know what was promised to the owner so that you don't go contrary to that. The other awesome thing about reading RFP response proposals is eventually in your career, we will all be writing proposals. You'll all be marketing, you'll all be writing proposals to clients. The best way to learn how to write a proposal is reading other people's proposals. The flowery verbiage, the warm, cuddly things that they're able to kind of present over in paper, you're going to learn that by reading these RFP responses. The last thing you need to get from your boss is the fee proposal your company gave to your client. This is very important. You need to know what your boss told the client you're going to provide and what your boss is expecting of you, okay? Budget's in here. The number of hours that you're expected to work on this project's in here. The 2 things that I highly recommend you need to pull out of this. Do you have book specs or sheet specs? If you're doing book specs, that's 40 hours you need to have in your time schedule while working on this project. If you're doing the construction cost estimate, again, that's 20 to 30 hours you need to have in mind when you're looking at the milestones. If it's a third-party cost estimator, they're going to need a submittal 3-4 weeks prior to the deadline that you're going to have to provide. So those are 2 big takeaways. Schedule. After you've got those 3 documents, schedule a time to meet with your boss and go through them. Make sure you understood that and that you and your boss are on the same page. Now, after you have done that work in-house, time to meet the client. Now, there's a lot of information on here, and I'm going to go quickly through this. You can look at it later on. But in this kickoff meeting, the client, the architect, is going to go over the scope of work. They're going to go over the construction budget. And be mindful, this might be completely different than that owner's RFP. So in negotiations, stuff changes. So you want to know what the scope is in the budget. Highly important is the milestones. What is your design milestones? And most importantly on that, you need to identify from the architect, is that the date that I'm giving you my materials, or is that the date that you're giving the package to the owner? I know architects who sit on a package for a week before they give it to the owner. So you don't want to be 2 weeks out thinking you've got 2 weeks to get your documents done, and they call up and you only have 1 week, especially if you have book specs and a cost estimate. So that's very important to get those 2 things figured out. When is your stuff due, and when is it going to the client? All this other stuff here in the bottom, these are mines in the minefield that you need to know ahead of time on what you need to be designing towards. Are there energy codes? Are there design guides? If you're doing medical, FGI guidelines. If you're doing Corps of Engineer, UFCs. The owner might even have a design guide. Some sophisticated owners have their own design guide or stuff that you need to follow. And if you don't follow these things, it's going to look really bad in the review meeting when they're like, did this person even know what we do? They didn't even look at our design guide. They're doing stuff all wrong. That looks exceptionally bad for everybody, and embarrassing to you, obviously. The last item on there, FM Global, they don't do their review till the drawings are done. So if FM Global, which is an insurance requirement, kicks in, their changes are going to be occurring during construction. They take a long time to do their review and change. Okay, it's an immediate change order if they require anything to change. So last item on this, in starting off a project, you need to understand, get out of the architect, your lines of communication, and specifically, how are you going to be able to talk to the facility manager directly? Not 3-4 people through. You need to be able to talk to the facility manager and their team face to face early on throughout construction. So you need to work out with the architect how you're going to do that. Preferably, they just want you to CC them and CC if there's another owner's person above that, just to keep them in the loop. But you need to identify how you're going to communicate with that facility manager early on. Handout number 2. It's a simple contact sheet, which really, you know, I'm kind of embarrassed handing this thing out because it's just an Excel file, but it's so handy. I use this all the time on projects, and if I didn't generate one about halfway through the project, I'm like, I haven't done my contact sheet. Now that you know the owners, you know the architect, you know their team architects are on the team, you know who else is who's the mechanical, who's the electrical, who's the structural. When you get into construction, write down who the sheet metal worker is, who the foreman is, who the plumber is, who's the controls contractor. Get all that contact information down there in an easy to access location. The others category on the bottom, you know, if I'm working with a vendor to size, say like a dust collection system, I will put their contact information down there in the bottom, a specialty type vendor or DEC permit reviewer or whatever. But this is so handy in design, is this contact sheet. Whew, design, hey, we finally got to design and we're only, I don't know, 40 minutes into the presentation. All right, so you're ready to design. You have all these years of education, technical knowledge. You are an engineer person. I don't know. All right, let's go. But what do you design? Which direction do you go at this point? So don't worry. There's only, I mean, at least 2 dozen, probably 4 dozen different solutions out there. Gas furnace, rooftop unit, boiler, heat pumps, VAV box, radiant floor, electric baseboard. Oh gosh, lions and tigers, oh my. What do you use? So how are you going to figure this out? But don't worry, out of those 2 dozen, only about 6 of those solutions would actually be considered good. And out of that 6, 2 of them are very good. And I put 2 up here because you get 2 engineers in a room and they will do everything completely different. And they both will say they are doing the best job. So I put 2 up there out of diplomatic purposes. You each pick the very good solution. So how do you decide? How do you figure this out? Another pro tip. You need to identify what the owner's definition of success is for this project. This is the owner, not you, not your boss. This is what the owner's definition of success is. And these 5 points right here is what I categorize as the priorities. And you need to talk to the owner directly to prioritize these 5 items. First one, minimize your first cost. Budget might be everything on this project. The second one, minimize operational costs. Now that's not just energy efficiency, and we'll touch more on that. That is the total cost of operating this building. They might have a grant up front that got them a lot of money to build this project, but the operational costs come out of their annual budget. So they might be like, you know, spend the money to reduce our operational costs. Performance. An example of where performance might be the highest priority would be a hatchery, a fish hatchery, where the water given to the fish has to be plus or minus 1 degree or else you're going to kill fish. That would be a scenario where performance is the highest priority of the design. Reliability, redundancy, missile defense system. Good example of it's got to work. Redundancy upon redundancy upon redundancy sort of scenarios. And the last item is sustainability, because frankly, some people just want the LEED platinum plaque in their entryway, regardless of how illogical it may be or arguments you may have. They just want the solar panels, the wind turbines. They are a sustainable company, and that's what they want. So that's their highest priority, and you don't worry about cost or anything else. Just yes, sir, yes, ma'am. Recognize this changes on every project. You might have the same client, the exact same building, and this will still change. You know, they might not have the same funding they did as the last project, so all of a sudden first costs go higher on this list. So you need to, going through this process will help you select your systems. All right, I tell everybody, I can take any engineer out of college, teach them all the calculations and basic theory of mechanical engineering in their first year. It just takes 10 years to apply that to make a design a system that's going to be constructible, maintainable, dependable, cost-effective, and the hardest of all, elegantly simple. And it typically goes in that order as you gain experience. So it takes time and experience to do this. So I said this is not a technical seminar, but these are things you're not going to get in Ashrae, in the Ashrae journal, stuff like this. So I'm just going to touch on these items on how to improve your technical knowledge. Number one, go to job sites. Beg and plead to shadow your senior engineers as they go to job sites. Heck, ask the electrical engineer if you could tag along when they go to a job site. Just get to the job site, look and see how things are built, how much space they take, and how they interact. This is what your drawings are having to reflect. Walk hardware stores, Lowe's, Home Depot. Go up and down the plumbing section and look and read every single component in there. These are your Lego blocks that you are building these systems out of. You not only need to know what Lego blocks are available to you, but it's also good to know the names of them when you talk to contractors or when they talk to you about this. And then also preferably the cost of stuff too. That's a good resource. Watch videos. No, not watch videos on how to size heat pumps. Watch videos on how to solder pipe, how to change a pump seal. Watch videos so you get at least a somewhat glimpse of an understanding of what your facility manager and your contractors do every day. And then finally, embrace these three groups of individuals: facility managers, contractors, and manufacturers representatives. I have learned way more, 100 times more from facility managers and contractors in this industry than I ever read in a book or in a magazine. These are the people who know. They know what works, they know what doesn't work. They know what manufacturers put out really good pieces of equipment and what manufacturers put out pieces of crap that you do not want to specify. When you get done with your design, if it doesn't work, they don't call you. I've had projects called back years later and they're like, well, why didn't you give me a call? I would have came out and helped you fix this. I'm like, nah, we just took care of it. All right, well, I feel like a jerk. They're the ones who have to fix your mistakes. They're the ones who have to maintain this building. So they are highly knowledgeable. And manufacturers representatives, a wealth of knowledge. I routinely throw myself at their mercy and say, it's a steam boiler. I don't know what I'm doing. Can you help me out? They take the time and they help you. And they're more than happy to do it. Because, you know, on the side aspect, they don't want their piece of equipment getting a bad rep because you did a bad design. So it's in their interest as well to make sure you don't screw up. But these three groups of individuals, get to know them as well as you can. And finally, is it final? No, it's not final. On design, always read the installation manual. To this day, I don't know how many times I've specified like a Navian boiler. I still, every single project, I open up the installation manual. I look at the piping diagrams, I look at the maintenance clearances, and I verify I'm doing it the way the manufacturer does. At least my basis of design will be constructible and correct. Substitutions, you know, whatever. But at least your basis will work. So always look at that. Design. Again, design. This is where the people locally, I was telling to grab some extra cookies and some caffeine so you could power through the end of this presentation. Whew. All right. As I drink some caffeine too, because I need it as well. Hang in there, folks. We're almost due. Further on in design, you need to understand the owners and the users' technical capabilities. especially in Alaska, especially as we're doing remote rural work. It might be the janitor who is maintaining your systems and troubleshooting the mechanical system. The classic understand simple versus complex rules this state in mechanical engineering. This is critical to a successful project. It's easy to design a complex skookum project, you see in the Ashrae magazines, woohoo! In 3 weeks, there'll be an on-off switch if they can't figure out how to do it. System redundancy and resiliency, yes, you are in Alaska. If you put one boiler in a building, it better be in downtown Anchorage. This again is critical for remote and cold region projects, is designing redundancy and resiliency. Let that pessimism as you and an engineer just run wild. I love that part of being an engineer is we can be the most pessimistic and paranoid individuals and we get paid to do it. Just don't bring it home with you. And then also long-term operational costs. Okay, so this is very dear well, it's very dear to me, which is the long-term operational costs. I think in Alaska, this is a big issue for us, is designing for maintainability. Long-term operational costs not only include energy conservation, which is the big buzzword. Again, lots of technical stuff out there regarding energy conservation, and you're going to see a lot of buzz stuff out there regarding decarbonization soon. But the other component of operational costs is the maintenance costs. You can buy a lot of gas and electricity with having to call a technician out to fix something, all right? So maintenance costs need to be weighed just as heavily as your utility bills. Best practices to support operation and maintenance in Alaska. This is my baby. This is a 58-page document that I have been generating over the last several years through workshops around the state with different organizations. Over 200 Alaska professionals have provided input on this thing. This includes architects, engineers, owners, project managers, and most importantly, facility managers. It covers all disciplines: architectural, structural, civil, electrical, mechanical. So share this in your industry and with your partners as well. It is broken into 3 different sections. The first section of it is pointed towards the project manager. This is the stuff they should be doing on a regularly scheduled schedule to reduce their operational costs. An example of that: walk the boiler room every day. Look for water where it's not supposed to be. The second part of that is, where do you put your money to reduce your operational costs? LED lights is one example of that scenario. So this is good as far as being able to prioritize capital costs. The third part, which is the most important for this audience, is how do you design around maintenance? This is very important to mechanical engineers. If you read this document, you read through that mechanical section 2 or 3 times, you will gain a huge leg up in your design capabilities and making sure that client number 2 is happy. So this is going to be, again, one of the handouts that will be available. It is dedicated to the public domain. There's no copyright. It. Spread it as far and wide as you want to. If you have items, and also I really love when people provide additional items back to me. We haven't been able to do workshops because of COVID, so this thing's been sitting idle for about 2 years now. But if you have a facility manager, your boss, or whoever who's like, hey, add these things in there, email them back to me and I'll update the document. Okay, these are also pro tips. A simple to-do list. Again, I do this on every project, every single project. Back in the old days when we had 3-ring binders and we had to make fire every morning to build our coffee, you wrote down this stuff. So how this helps you out. Now, I do it now on Word, sitting next to me as I'm designing. How this works is, let's say you're cruising on sizing piping, hydronic piping. You're counting up GPMs, you're going crazy. And as you're doing that, you remember, oh, do I have my pump minimum bypass somewhere in the system? I don't think I do. Rather than stopping what you're doing, go to your to-do list, under heating, pump minimum bypass, question mark. Go back, get back in the groove and keep rolling. You are gonna have hundreds of these distractions as you're designing. Something's gonna pop up in your mind. Heck, it might even pop up on a different project when somebody talks about, expansion joints or seismic joints. You're like, oh, I haven't done that on this other one. Quickly open up your to-do list, add it on there. This is a great way for you to make sure you don't let anything fall through the holes or through the gaps, or distract you to the point where you make a mistake. My to-do list go pages on projects. When you do, in this to-do list, there's a couple different things. Some of them might just be simple, add water hammer arresters or something like that. Other ones are going to be questions. How big is the water storage tank? Well, when you find that answer out, oh, it's 30 feet wide by 10 feet high per Kyle on January 31st email. Write that answer next to your question on the to-do list. And then never erase anything off your to-do list. Just put the line through font on it and throw it down at the bottom. I have so many times in a design months later gone back and said, wait, did I ask this question, or who answered it and what was the answer? I go back to my to-do list all the time and kind of go, yep, okay, I took care of that. Set these up however you want, systems, specs, however you want, but a to-do list is, in my opinion, critical to quality control on a project, quality assurance. The other thing is a design checklist. Again, you don't want to get to 95% and found out you forgot the trap primers or the water hammer arresters or expansion joints. They are very easy to forget. I created a design checklist in my younger years, and then I went back to it kind of thinking I was going to give it out as a handout, and I was kind of embarrassed by it. So you're not getting that. And I didn't have time to make a more thorough one. But I highly recommend you and your boss in your department get together and create a design checklist for mechanical systems. So at the very least, you got those water hammer arresters, you got those trap primers, because you will, again, hundreds of design solutions and things you have to do on every project. Something's going to fall through the cracks. Finally, QCs, very, very important. Especially in your early years while you're still learning the industry. Get a QC to your boss, or if your boss doesn't do QCs or they just do spell checks on you, find somebody in your department who does a thorough QC and give your drawings to them 2 weeks prior. 2 weeks gives them enough time to work it into their project, into their schedule, and then also time for you to react to their comments. When you give them their QC, do not just give them your mechanical drawings. I know when I was doing QCs for other people, they would just give me the mechanicals. That doesn't help. That just corrects their design. I need the electrical, I need the civil, I need the structural, I need the architectural drawings. Because my job as a QCer is to make sure you don't put a louver where a cross brace is. That here's something. All the plumbing walls are on the grid lines, which magically means every one of your plumbing walls is sitting right above a steel beam. So good luck with that waste pipe. By the way, that's something you should find at the 35% level and tell the architect about, not the 95. But we need all the disciplines drawings to do a proper coordination on a QC. You also should be doing your QCs preferably before your boss gets it, because your boss is grading you on your work product. So if you correct some stuff ahead of time, it's nice. But anyways, QC is very critical. Gotta have them. They will save your butt. Drafting. Like I said, I'm an old school engineer. Drafting is exceptionally important. This is your work product. This is your name on these drawings. And if you draft sloppily, like the one on the left here, people are going to think your design is sloppy, your calculations are sloppy. Those two details have the exact same information on it, but I guarantee you 9 out of 10 owners are going to hire the engineer on the right than the one on the left. Okay? The one on the left, and again, I've given like at least a 30-minute presentation on proper drafting, but actually it was an hour. It was that old school. Text is different size. Leaders are crossing over each other over text. They're all over the place. Text isn't lined up. It's just a chaotic, hideous detail. And someone should call you out on that if you ever do that. On the right, everything's lined up. Heck, even the leaders in the same angle. It looks very professional, very thorough. That is the work product that you want to be providing to your clients. Okay, and don't worry, this is going to be in the record drawings for 70 years. So everybody, whoever walks in that building for 70 years is going to see your sloppy drafting. No there. So flip side on this, take pride in your work. If you are writing a report, give that report to a technical writer, most likely your marketing director, and have them read through it. Okay? Engineers aren't exactly known for our writing abilities, so have a technical reviewer. Make sure you don't look stupid. Construction. How are we doing on time here? Woohoo! All right. First and foremost, contractors are your peers. Again, may God have mercy on your soul if you walk onto a job site with I'm the engineer and you are the contractor. Oh, it's on. You are going to have your butt handed to you. Because guess what? They know more than you do. You might know some good theory, but in reality, you draw pretty pictures. And that's exactly what I tell contractors when they think I'm some hoity-toity engineer. I say, hey, I draw pretty pictures. Real men and women construct this stuff and make it a reality. So that's where I'm in this role. Contractors, you want to be honest, respectful, and professional to them. Because again, they know more than you do. The two sentences you do not want to hear on a job site. Number one, I'm just a dumb plumber. That is a yellow flag right there. You got to quickly work on that and say, no, man, you are not a dumb plumber. There's no such thing as a dumb plumber. You are a foreman. You know way more about how to install these systems than I do. You got to recognize and show them that you respect their knowledge. Because the next sentence that's going to come out of their mouth is, well, you're the engineer. You tell me what to do. Guess what? You don't know what the hell you're doing. So that's going to be very difficult. You need them on board as a team to work out these solutions. Chances are 80% of the time, if there's a question or an RFI, the contractor already has an answer. They already know a solution that's going to work. And you are 500 miles away. So you need their help in working through construction. It's a team sport there. This is going to get me in trouble. So I'm just going to say contractually, your proper line of communication is you will talk to the architect will talk to the owner will then send paperwork down to the general contractor will then talk to the sheet metal contractor if he's prime, and the sheet metal contractor will then talk to the plumber. And any correspondence back will then go backwards through that process. I call the plumber. And we have a good conversation, and sometimes we say this call never happened. But you need to have that direct contact with the contractor, with the plumbers and the mechanicals. Number one, it breaks down barriers. It breaks down the us versus them. They understand that you are wanting to work with them to find proactive solutions. It's very, very good. In fact, again, on the drive over here, that, as you know, conversation I had was with a contractor regarding some construction issues in the field, coordination, verification stuff. And that was just a verification, which helped them make sure they weren't going to make a mistake, that I'd show up at rough end and go, well, that sucks, you did that wrong. But okay, so the key on this is when you talk to a contractor in the very beginning, you make sure they understand whatever you guys say on the phone doesn't mean crap regarding the contract. If they go forward and they do something, you got to tell them, hey, look, I might not be the inspector. The owner might inspect this thing, and if you do something that's not on my drawings and there hasn't been paperwork, they're going to tell you to change it. And the whole thing of, well, I talked to the engineer doesn't mean jack. It will not hold up in a court. It will not hold up when they are asking for money or anything like that. So if you talk to them, you get things clarified, you have to say, you need to send this in as an RFI for both of us, for saving your butt and covering my butt. This needs to be sent in as an RFI. It's a confirming RFI. They say, hey, this issue came up. We want to do this instead. You say, sure, great, that's fantastic. Go for it. 15-second response to an RFI, which you already knew about 2 weeks earlier. But you've got to document those things in RFIs. If you don't, both the architect and the general contractor are going to have your head. What also normally happens on this, though, is that when I talk to contractors on the phone, I may follow it up with an email, make sure I CC the architect and the general contractor, so they're in the loop. Typically, they're pretty cool with this as long as they are in the loop and they don't get surprised, okay? And that's that on construction, is respect the contractor, respect their knowledge, be honest with them, and just play nicely, and they're going to react. And once they know you're not trying to screw them, life will be good. Once you have a project with a bad contractor that goes south, you'll understand how important it is to get off on the right foot with the contractor and beginning construction. Marketing. All right, we're getting near the end here. Woohoo. You, as a professional, need to market yourself. You're going to be in this industry for 30, 40 years. Chances are that will not be with the same firm. My recommendation to you is this. Number one, market yourself and your company, right? They pay your paycheck. You should get them work. But very beginning, master resume. You need to have a master resume that has all the projects you have worked on. Chances are if you work for a large firm, your marketing director already has created a master resume for you. If you don't, create one on your own. By the way, you take this with you throughout your career. You know, that whole, oh no, I'm not taking anything with me when I change owners. No, make sure you got a copy of this to bring on throughout your career. What is on your master resume? For every project, you want to have the project name and the location, what your role was on that project, and then have a write-up about a paragraph long that describes the systems and the building, okay? And then the other things that you can put in that information below that your marketing director will love if you get every single time would be the mechanical or the project construction costs, design start date, and construction finish date. These things show up on proposal requirements often. So I'm just not saying this is nice. These are actually like Corps of Engineer proposal responses require this sort of information. Other thing I recommend, write down all the team members, design team members that were on that project, and then also all the key stakeholders. Because sometimes you may need a reference, and having that key stakeholder as a reference is really good. Do this for every single project, and just keep a running list, alphabetical. Oh, also project number. I didn't write this on here. Whatever your company's project number was, so that later on, if you're like, what's my hangar experience? You can also use this to go, oh yeah, M21022. Okay, got it. That's also helpful. The other thing, in addition to being an outstanding communicator and rock star coordinator, the other thing that's going to help you in your career is staying in touch with past clients, facility managers. Stop by after a good snowfall and see if the snow melt system's working. I recommend you verify that before you walk in the door if the snow melt system actually worked. But if it's working fantastic, walk in and say, hey, how's everything going? In the end, your best clients, facility managers, are the ones that when they see you, they say, hey, take a seat, want a cup of coffee? Those are the level of relationships you need to start generating in this industry. And then finally, get active in your industry. Ashrae for mechanicals. Ashrae provided me so much in my career. And it's a really simple thing. If you look at the past presidents of Ashrae, particularly the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, you'll see a lot of last names that companies are named after in town. You're going to see a lot of who's who, and this continues on to 2000, 2010. A lot of the who's who in the industry were past presidents of Ashrae. Now, is that a coincidence? No, not really. Typically, if you are active in Ashrae, you are a little bit more, proactive, and this will help you in your communication and coordination. But also, your name gets out there. Let's say after 5 years, you want to change jobs. I don't know who you are, but I tell you, if you were the secretary, treasurer, vice president, president of Ashrae, I have seen your name for 4 years. And so I at least know who you are. So this helps you find jobs in the future. If you're a manufacturer's rep, this helps you get your name out there so that when you call up, people know who you are. So definitely get active in your industry, volunteer, give back. Like I said, this Ashrae was the basis of me being able to, it opened a lot of doors for me in my career. Absolutely. And then also, of course, that's true for any of the engineering disciplines that are out there. Okie dokie. Holy cow. Key takeaways. I am going way faster than I ever practiced this thing. Good job, Craig. That mechanical engineer did a really great job on this. Oh, wait, never mind. Okay. Your key takeaways. Man, I could have filled it up with so much other stuff that I cut out of this presentation. No. Finish it, Craig. Get done with this. All right. Key takeaways. If you're still awake, make the client and the design team look good. Again, everybody on the team, you want to, make them look good, particularly in front of their clients, which for sub-consultants, like the structural engineer or the electrical engineer, again, you want to make them look good in front of their client, which is the architect. So, yeah, learn body language, communicate like it's 1995, use your phone as an actual phone, be a proactive coordinator, learn from these masterful masters of information, facility managers, contractors, and manufacturer reps. Can't say that enough. Wealth of knowledge that you're not going to get out of a book. Use your tools, the ones that we handed out here, contact list, to-do list, coordination diagram, and the design checklist you're going to create, because I was not happy with mine. And then finally, take pride in your work documents. I know that you're going to be going deadline after deadline, and oftentimes your work product is going to slip. But you gotta, that's your reputation. And in this industry, all you have is your reputation. This is what will take you everywhere or nowhere, depending on how you, play the game, I guess is what they say. So with that, oops. Dang, I could have put so much more into this. No, Tracy's waving me off. I guess we'll take questions. Okay, so my contact information is there. Blah, blah, blah. Ashrae Alaska chapter website information is there. This is where the handouts are going to be. This is also where you will be able to find the future presentations and the recording of this if you fell asleep halfway through and you're like, oh gosh, what did he say? This is where you'll find that information. So, anybody questions, comments, whatnot from anybody else online? You can, hopefully, you can unmute yourself.
Hey, great job, Craig. Good presentation.
Will the presentation you recorded be on the website too, or just handouts?
No, so this has been recorded, so be careful what you say. Yeah, no, this has been recorded. It'll be up on Ashrae's website probably next week is my guess. Nothing. I made everybody go to sleep. Fantastic. Oh, there's one. Okay, so like I said, coming up next month, our own Tracy McEwen is going to give a presentation as well. She's going to be giving you additional kernels of knowledge. And then also after Tracy is Matt Campen, who is coming to us from the oil industry. So that's going to be a great perspective on the industry. And then after Mac is going to be Glenn Evans, who's a manufacturer's representative here in Anchorage. And I'm also looking very much forward to Glenn's presentation because if you ever met Glenn, he is an amazing guy with just, he exudes like extrovertism that I wish I could learn. So I'm really looking forward to Glenn's presentation too. All right, well, with that, I won't keep you any farther. And unfortunately, the people here didn't get lunch. It's all sitting there still warm because we got set up late. So I'll let them get food. And I should really stop recording this. Okay, so thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing you guys all next month.